Have you ever felt so frustrated that you felt like you could just tear your hair out? That phrase is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as to mean to feel extreme desperation. But for someone with trichotillomania or compulsive hair pulling, that definition doesn't even begin to cover it. Trichotillomania is the urge or the impulse to pull out your own hair. And after pulling out your hair, you feel a sense of relief, which basically creates a positive reinforcement, so the behavior continues. It was discovered in 1889. It wasn't in the DSM until 1987. Currently, it is classified as an impulse control disorder. But there is some conversation going on to have it reclassified as body-focused repetitive behavior, or BFRB, such as nail biting or compulsive skin picking. Approximately 4% of the population does have trichotillomania, and it does not discriminate against age, race, or gender. I've been openly gay since I was a teenager. Coming out of the closet was a cakewalk in comparison to admitting that I pull out my own hair. It started when I was 6 years old. My family moved from England to Scotland, and it was very emotional and stressful for me. It started with me pulling out my eyelashes. I couldn't tell you why, but I definitely felt a sense of relief afterwards. Eventually, I had no eyelashes left, so I started pulling out the hair from my scalp. The doctor told my mother that I would eventually grow out of it, and I did for a little while. But in 1994, my family moved to Canada, and I can't remember a time since then where I wasn't pulling out my own hair. In my late teens, I became so distraught by my behavior that I started to shave my head, so I couldn't pull out any more hair, and in public I would wear wigs. The last time I visited a professional hairstylist was when I was 17 years old. If I needed a haircut, I'd ask my sister to trim it for me. I became extremely adept at hiding the evidence, even though at one point in my life a few years ago, the bald spot on the crown of my head was more than 4 inches in diameter. 2011, I finally had enough, and I sought help. My family doctor, bless her, referred me to a psychiatrist, and together we started cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Now, CBT is not for everyone. There are a number of treatment options available. Some are a little mainstream, some are more alternative or holistic, and I chose to blend the two together. Through CBT, I rediscovered my passion for knitting and found that to be an extremely effective replacement behavior for me. I also began to practice meditation regularly, as well as Reiki. In summer 2011, I began to see a huge improvement. I wasn't pulling out my hair nearly as much, and I was beginning to see significant regrowth. Most importantly, my self-esteem was coming back. So I decided to take a leap, and I asked a friend of mine if she would dye my hair. Exposing my scalp to her was one of the most stressful things I've ever done, but afterwards it was incredibly liberating. And I surprised myself when I asked her if she would take photographs. And after that, I did the unthinkable. I posted them to Facebook. After I posted the pictures to Facebook, I started to get messages and phone calls from friends who were telling me that they also pulled out their hair and were too ashamed and afraid to admit it to anybody. The most significant thing that happened was a phone call I received from a former coworker, and she told me that she was at her wit's end with her little boy who was pulling out his hair, and she had no idea that this existed until I spoke up, and she thanked me for changing his life. That changed my life. It completely turned around my perspective on everything, and that phone call is why I'm here this evening. It's been a year since that phone call and since I dyed my hair, and there's been no relapse. Everything about this hair except the color is real. Thank you. A year ago, I visited a professional this past summer, I visited a professional hairstylist for the first time in over a decade. And now, if I'm wearing a hat in public, you know it's because I want to and not because I have something to hide. When you have trichotillomania, you can feel alone, ashamed, desperate, and like you're the only person in the world who's doing this. But it's important to know that if you pull out your own hair, it's no one's fault, and especially not your own. For me, trichotillomania is a daily battle. but it's important that I remember that even though I will always have trichotillomania, it's never going to have control over me again. If you know someone who has trichotillomania, or if you have it yourself, I really recommend a book called Help for Hair Pullers. This is actually a book that my psychiatrist recommended to me, and it's what we worked through together during my cognitive behavioral therapy. Another great resource is the Trichotillomania Learning Center, which has been a pioneer in research for over 20 years. The most important thing that you can remember if you do pull out your own hair is there is hope and there is help. So thank you very much.